Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What
talk.
a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Gilbo.
Two great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And good evening, everyone. Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of the Louisiana Radio Network, along with the Executive Editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horn. Jackson Blackman, our producer tonight. Great show lined up for you. And I was wondering in the third inning yesterday, Todd, whether this would be more of a funeral than a celebratory show. And I say that as in the positive, in the fact that we still got LSU baseball to talk about. It didn't look good there for a time being against Little Rock on Monday night, but the Tigers do get the victory, and they advance to the Super Regionals, the 17th Super Regional appearance for the LSU baseball program, and we're going to be talking a lot of baseball here over the next couple of hours. In fact, in about 15 minutes or so, Jacob Rudner from Baseball America will join us on the Max Home Hotline. We'll hear from Corey Diaz, who covers LSU for the USA Today Network. LSU baseball coach Jay Johnson will join us in hour number 2, and we'll hear from the voice of the West Virginia Mountaineers baseball team, Andrew Caridi. He'll join us in the second hour, as well as we'll get a scouting report on the Mountaineers, the Big 12 regular season champs who won the Clemson Regional. They swept their way through that, winning 2 games over Kentucky and then also beating the host school Clemson on Saturday. So West Virginia, who's played very well away or very well on the road this year, comes to Baton Rouge, and they're a dangerous team. And I don't think anybody would have thought Little Rock would be a dangerous team, but man, Todd, they gave LSU all they could handle over the obviously Sunday night and Monday night.
I'm sick and tired of talking about how great of a resurgence Little Rock had at the end of the season. And I had to watch the games on TV, and I love Ben McDonald, but I mean, I heard the same storylines over and over. I was dreaming about Little Rock's record and how many players were injured all season long. It's baseball, right?
Yeah.
And when you get to a tournament, things are going to happen, and it comes down to execution.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to sound like a coach, but it comes down to execution. And for 2 games, the first 2 games, ironically, whenever LSU had 2 of the best pitchers in the country throwing the rock, they executed better than they have all season. I would say arguably, if not better than anybody else in the country. That 10-4 loss against Little Rock was they fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
LSU fell apart. What were you thinking in the second inning whenever they rang up 5 runs on LSU?
I said that this is a nightmare for LSU. This is reminiscent. I know a lot of people brought up Stony Brook, but that Stony Brook team had, 7 guys that were drafted? I mean, that was just
right. But
that was a really good team that came to Baton Rouge. And
right. But
this is just a bunch of dudes out there, and I guess guys that are just playing. They're grateful to have, well, not all of them I guess would have a scholarship, but just grateful to be playing college baseball. And I think Ben McDonald said it well during that 5-run rally that they are not trying to overdo it. They're doing what they, they're just dumping the ball over the second baseman on these little flare hits. Cano turns into, he all of a sudden for 4 games, the guy is so tough to get out. And they were playing loose, they were playing free, they were playing confident, and I was thinking when Jay Johnson came to get Zach Collin, I said, well, what happens if Kason Evans doesn't have his stuff? They're not gonna come from behind and win this game
because not that Stony Brook is irrelevant, but it was 2012. This version of the LSU team, of LSU's team, has not always been able to perform offensively.
Yeah,
whenever they needed to, and for me, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but at that particular moment, 5 runs that you needed to score to win the game at that point seemed like a mountain to climb.
Well, I think it got even more depressing, if you would, if you're LSU in the next inning.
When they
loaded the bases, Jake Brown's up there, and he's given a pretty good at bat, and all he does is just fly out, and again, they leave the bases. They leave the bases full, bases loaded, and you're just sitting there saying, "Man, this is just a continuation. They can't buy a hit. This just looks rough." And then Ethan Fry's bases clearing double. At that point, then you said, "Okay, they're on their way." And then Kason Evans started dealing, and I don't want to say that was the game because
it wasn't.
Because Little Rock came back and actually got it back to within 1. And then LSU then, I think, really put it away in the 9th inning. The Jared Jones home run, the Luis Hernandez base hit, gives them the 4-run cushion. I think Jay Johnson said it well. Compare that to the regional championship game last year in Chapel Hill, and LSU never can get that 2-run lead, or else they would have won that game. Here, they were able to get the 2+ run lead, and that was enough to finally put away a very pesky, gritty, resilient Little Rock team.
Eerie similarities. You bring up last year's final and regional final in Chapel Hill. Will Helmers takes the mound, steadies the team for, with a heroic effort on the mound. For, what was it, 6 2/3 innings, or if I remember correctly. That was Kason Evans here. Now, Kason was a little more dramatic, a little more fired up, a little more powerful. Obviously, striking out 9. He struck out the lineup. He struck out the lineup in
impressive.
order.
Very impressive.
And but then last year they brought in Gage Jump at North Carolina in that final. Yeah. And he couldn't seal the deal. Yeah. And then they bring in Anthony Eisen, and right off the top, it doesn't look like he's going to seal the deal.
No. Just a base hit that gets through up the middle, but he was able to. I've still felt good about LSU's chances at that point. Okay. Once they got the lead, I didn't think they were going to lose, and I thought once they got the lead, I thought they were going to put up about 12 or 13 runs.
I thought it was. I thought it was redemptive for LSU, for Jay Johnson, because of the similarities it had to last year. And the fact that now West Virginia is coming to the Super Regional, and West Virginia would have been coming to the Super Regional in Baton Rouge had LSU pulled that out last year against North Carolina. So many similarities. But the other thing, and I think the big thing that's probably going to be talked about quite a bit tonight, is just the overall parity in college baseball right now, and whether it's Little Rock or it's Murray State or whoever it is that's not expected to do it can do it, because it's baseball, and as long as you execute, and execute your hitting, execute your defense, and of course execute your pitching, you've got a chance at this level. And Little Rock was not a bad collection of players. Mm-hmm. They just had literally 6 players injured for more than 15 games. 6 starters injured and out. Can you imagine if LSU had 6 starters out?
Make Jay Johnson's job actually a little easier.
Well, yeah. In terms of roster management.
Right. Would have made it, but no, tough. I mean, a hat tip to Little Rock. They just. They were impressive. What I was going to compare it to when LSU was down 4 runs was the Houston, when they lost to Houston in the 2014 regional, because you go back to that regional and LSU was in control. And in fact, they had a late lead. I think they were leading 4-0 in the 7th inning or something like that. in the Sunday night game, and then it just collapsed on them, and then they got crushed the next game, 12-2. And I remember on Sunday night, I was watching Squeeze play and watching all the games and watching all these fantastic finishes and all this kind of stuff, and I'm just saying, man, this, and going into the final game against Little Rock, and I thought that was going to be a walk in the park for LSU, and I'm sitting there thinking, and LSU jumps on them, scores 3 runs in the first inning, and I'm thinking, man, this is just, there's just no drama here. There's no excitement. It's kind of boring.
So you're the fault. It's your fault.
I said the exact same thing.
And then before you know it, it's
So the baseball gods heard you guys.
Yeah, for sure,
they heard your thoughts.
sure.
They heard your verbiage, your words, and they struck.
And then all of a sudden,
That's your fault.
You're watching this game on Sunday develop, and then Little Rock pours it on there at the end, and then it just. And I felt, and we talked, we had kind of a production meeting on Monday looking ahead to this show. And I mean, I honestly thought it was 50-50 on whether LSU would win on Monday night, just because Little Rock was just
on a roll.
They were on a roll. And ever since whenever their tournament started against Ohio Valley, whether it was I guess it was on a Tuesday or something, since that Tuesday, every game they've played, other than, I guess, game 1 of the regional, every game they played, if they lose, their season would be over. Mm-hmm. So they went into Monday night's game accustomed to that situation. They were comfortable with that situation. They had no problems playing the win or go home, playing that win or go home scenario, and they were very successful with it. They won 3 elimination games in the Baton Rouge Regional, and this is the first time all year LSU is all of a sudden staring at a game that if they lose, they're done.
They're done.
And I didn't know how mentally they would handle it. I know Jay Johnson has always talked about the great character with this team. I found it interesting what he said in the postgame, talking about actually bringing them in to the locker room earlier in the day, hours before the game.
So Glenn, who just joined us, actually has an article that's up on Tiger Rag right now.
Yeah.
It's published about 15, 20 minutes ago that talks about that very thing. And that is amazing.
Right.
Because not only did he make the lineup batting order changes to try, but there was a logical reason behind each one of it. He explained that.
Right.
And then he sort of envisioned what roles those players would come into. I don't know if he envisioned the score being 5-1 when it started happening.
And
I don't think he envisioned Milam going 0 for 5 and Dickinson going 0 for 4 either.
No, but Ethan Fry's big game. And somebody had asked me, I was actually on a radio show, I know one of our Tiger Rag affiliates, WGSO, Christian Garrick's show, and he asked me about moving Jared Jones. And I admit, I sometimes have a Major League Baseball point of view of things because I watch enough of it. And in Major League Baseball, if a guy's struggling,
are the Cubs in the major leagues?
They are in the major leagues, and as of Monday,
I know right now.
As of Monday,
years,
they were tied with the Mets for the best record in the NL. All right, so settle down.
They're named after a baby animal. That's their whole problem. No other team is. That's it right there.
All right, can we get on to my point here? We got less than a minute here.
You
before
brought
we
it
go to
up.
break. But all I said was Major League Baseball. I didn't say.
Yeah, but as they
Chicago
say in court, you open the door.
But in Major League Baseball, usually you kind of stick with a struggling guy in that spot for several games before you eventually make a change. And I just thought, hey, they've won a bunch of games with Jared Jones batting second, so don't panic, don't change it. Eventually he'll come through for you. In the end, Jay Johnson was completely right on it because the move to Ethan Fry in the number 2 hole was huge, and then dropping Jared Jones down.
And there was no eventually. They had to win that game.
Yes, yeah. And so, and then having Jared Jones at number 6 in the 6th spot, it worked out perfect. And I criticized Jay Johnson a lot. That was perfect. What he did, it worked out.
You're moving him up to 4th in the SEC?
Maybe, yeah, over Tim Corbin. That was embarrassing for Vanderbilt. We'll be back after this here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
From the Super Chevy Dealer Studio, Jeff Palermo along with Glenn Gilbo and Todd Horn. Let's quickly get to our first guest. It's a shorter segment here, so we'll quickly bring in Jacob Rudner from Baseball America. He joins us on the Max Home Hotline. Jacob, thanks a lot for spending some time with us tonight. We appreciate it. What a wild weekend as far as regional play. 8 top seeds advance, 8 are done. What do you make out of the fact that it's not a cinch just because you host a regional that you'll end up in the super regionals?
Yeah, I think it's great, actually, for college baseball. I think that this was a weekend that proved that parity in the sport is not dead, even though we saw the fewest total at-large bids go to mid-major teams since the NCAA adopted the super regional format in 1999. This is a good weekend for college baseball because of it. I think that it's really awesome to see teams like Murray State and UTSA advancing on past the regionals. It was exciting to see Little Rock push LSU the way that it did. These are the kinds of storylines that I think make the postseason exciting. And it also just goes to show you, even if the mid-majors are kind of being squeezed out of the field a little bit here with power conference baseball as good as it is, these teams do still have a chance if they can make their way in.
Jacob, does this result, as exciting as it is, because everybody loves the underdog type situation, does it make the Southeastern Conference look bad right now? Because
yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it does in a sense, because the expectation when you get 13 bids is that you're going to see a lot of teams advance. And 4 teams into the super regional round, none of which were at-large bids, isn't the best look, of course. And I don't think anybody's going to try and deny that. At the same time, though, I really struggle to downgrade the SEC from exactly what it is, which is college baseball's best conference. It markedly leads the nation in products pushed into the MLB draft and all the way up to the game's highest level. We've seen the last 5 national champions come from the conference. It is definitively the best league in the country, and I don't think that a poor performance in one weekend where fluky things happen, like you look at Georgia, for example, that was a tough regional to win with a lot of teams that can hit home runs in a ballpark that loves homers. And so, is it bad that Georgia lost? Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, I think it's also just kind of speaking to the health of the game at large. And a conference is allowed to have a bad weekend, and that's what happened.
So the SEC set the record for most teams getting invited with 13, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so they must hold the record now for most teams to get kicked out of the tournament with 9 in the first weekend, right? I can't see how any other conference. The previous record was 11, so that's got to be a new SEC record. Will Greg Sankey be talking about that?
Listen, I think that it does bring up a really valuable conversation about bid distribution. We look at a team like Xavier, who we had in our final projection going into selection Monday and really did believe that they had done enough to get into the field, but they weren't even included in the first 4 out. Kentucky was included in the field 5 games above 500 with a 13-17 league record, and they weren't even in the last 4 in. So, I do think that next year this kind of performance will linger in the minds of the selection committee, and maybe when it comes time to consider, hey, do we include a Kentucky over a team like Xavier that really did challenge itself and has good metrics, maybe next year the answer is the Xavier team gets in or UConn gets in. But at the same time, I go back to what I said a second ago, which is that this is still the strongest conference in baseball. It's the hardest conference to win in. These teams should be rewarded for how much they're challenged, just like how I'm saying we should reward Xavier's for how much they challenge themselves. Is 13 too much? This year indicates that it might be, but at the same time, I really do still believe that the SEC is college baseball's power, and it should be represented as such.
Hey, I wanted to ask your opinion of what you think of Kevin O'Sullivan's rant to the NCAA official over the weekend.
I think it's being overblown just a little bit. Is it wrong to have gone after players and NCAA officials? Of course. And I think that if he could do it over again, he certainly would not have done it that way. At the same time, though, these coaches battle for their teams, and these are high-stress moments where their livelihoods depend on the results of these kinds of games. And so, he's not the first coach to blow up that way. I'm certain of that with NCAA officials. He might be the first one that we've seen do it because it was caught on video and happened so publicly. But again, I really guarantee you it's not the first time that it's happened. And I think people are going to move on pretty quick. They already kind of have in Gainesville.
Well, Jacob, explain to us and our listeners what the issue was. What was he so upset about that he cussed out everybody the way he did?
My understanding is that their games were pushed back an hour due to late game times in the previous night in the Conway Regional. The issue, however, again, and this is as I understand it, is that Florida was informed of those changes after 1 o'clock in the morning, both times that they had their games moved back, and Coach O'Sullivan took issue with that.
Okay. What about Tim Corbin's performance at the microphone after the first Wright State loss?
I would go back to the same thing. Again, is it appropriate? No. Did that reporter who asked what I thought was a very reasonable question, did she deserve that? Absolutely not. Is it the first time that a coach has gotten upset in a press conference, though? No, it certainly won't be the last. But again, it's a big stage, and so these guys are pushed into the forefront of the social media churn whenever these moments do happen. Is it a good look? No. Would they do it over again? I certainly think so. But is it the end of the world for me? Really, it is not.
Jacob, 30 seconds here. Give us a quick scouting report on West Virginia.
Yeah, good team that has a solid group of pitchers. Their ace, Kern, has done a good job so far this season, and their lineup is very consistent. That's how they propelled themselves to the top of the Big 12 Conference. Good, mature at-bats that do a really good job of pushing pitchers deep into the game.
All right, good stuff. Jacob, we'll have to get you on for a longer time, maybe when LSU is in Omaha. We appreciate your time.
Look forward to it, guys. Thank you.
Jacob Rudner from Baseball America. We'll take a break. Corey Diaz from the USA Today Network covers LSU baseball, covers LSU athletics for the USA Today Network. He'll join us when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row. And honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
Now, back to Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine. That's Todd Horn. And the editor, Glenn Gilbo, Jackson Blackman, our producer. Let's head back out to the Max Home Hotline. Corey Diaz, who covers LSU for the USA Today Network, joins us. Corey, have you caught up on your sleep yet? Did you take a little afternoon power nap? It's been a couple of long nights here at the box.
Appreciate you guys having me on, and no, I have not caught up on sleep yet. I'm hoping to be able to do that these next couple of days because, it's been a handful of years or so since I've covered a baseball regional, and I just forgot how much of a grind those things are.
Yes, they are.
It's crazy.
Well, when you have a non-existent rain delay for 5.5 hours to start it off on Friday, you're in for a long weekend.
Yep, that set the table for us, and TV certainly didn't do us any favors.
No.
We kept getting 8 o'clock, first pitches, and that's never good news.
We should have pulled a Kevin O'Sullivan on those NCAA. we had more reason to be mad than Kevin. 5-hour rain delay while U-High's playing a doubleheader. People are playing the Frisbee. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Man, listen, travel ball's got no rules, man. Those kids do whatever they want,
Corey, does what happened with LSU at the regional with Little Rock this weekend make them stronger and better or worse off heading into the regional?
Todd, that's a good question. Honestly, for me, the way I felt about it, walking out of the stadium and this is no joke, guys, I walked out of the stadium last night at 2:45 a.m.
Yeah. I believe it.
I think I don't feel any different about where LSU is versus where I felt like they were maybe Thursday afternoon. I think a lot of what transpired over the course of the 4 days, there's nothing really that shocked me outside of Jason Evans last night. I think if you take what he did from a starting rotation standpoint going forward through Super Regionals and potentially an Omaha berth, I think if you're Jay Johnson and Nate Yeske, I think you may have found your third guy. And I think that obviously would make you feel better, right? So, and I just look offensively. I mean, look, this was, according to everybody that covers college baseball, this was the easiest regional of any host site, right? Would it have been probably better if LSU would just swept their way through it? Of course. But, I think maybe even play in the extra game, again, because it gives you an opportunity to see a Kason Evans and him do what he does. And you go, okay, well, maybe we found our third guy. Like, if we don't have the third game, then, there may be still a question about who's the third starter, right? So I think LSU's still sitting in a good spot. They're still at home. West Virginia's going to have to come here. So I think, it's probably par for the course for him, but maybe a slight edge better, Todd, from your question, just from the Kason Evans standpoint.
Yeah, well, I wasn't that surprised by Kason, though. I mean, he did strike out 9 in a row, and I know it was Arkansas Little Rock, but that was amazing. But we were just talking earlier, Kason's really pitched well every game he's pitched, except for the start against Arkansas. I guess he gave up 7 hits in 3 2/3 innings, but the thing about him, though, he's definitely the third best pitcher on the team, and he could be the third starter. But Jay and Nate really like him to have him in relief, because there's nobody that's as good as him out of the pen, I would say. So you think they're still going to kind of finesse him, Corey?
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. I think that, I guess I've had 1.5 years on covering LSU baseball. And I think if there's anything that I've learned about Jay Johnson and his managerial style at this point, very early on, excuse me, is that he seems like a very much kind of like wait and see kind of coach. And I don't know if that's a really smart thing or what, but, look, let's say for whatever reason, right, that West Virginia, sort of roughs up either Anthony Ianson or Cade Anderson at some point this weekend, and they do drop one of those games. So you're going to get that if necessary. I mean, Glenn, I think Jay, the hand is dealt for Jay. Like, he would have to start Kason. But, if they win game 1 with Anthony or Cade on the mound, and they're going into the 8th inning and they're up a couple of runs in game 2, I think you're also right, Glenn. I think Kason comes in and closes that game out. So I think the versatility and flexibility that Kason allows Yeske and Johnson on the back end, or maybe have him come in, start a game like a game 3 or what have you, like, those are going to be pieces that can help you if you do get to Omaha and you're playing however many games in however many days, right? Like, that's, having a guy that can sort of do that, come in and maybe throw 20 pitches, early in Omaha, and then 3 or 4 days later can start a game for you. I mean, that's invaluable, right? So I think Kason's, just his versatility and his ability to perform, in different roles, I think it's great for LSU, and it could be something that, if they continue to play deeper into June, he's going to be a critical piece.
Corey, when you look at West Virginia, I know you probably had a chance to look at them a little bit, if not a lot, over the last 5 hours that you've been trying to fight off sleep. But do you think they're really that good?
It's interesting. I thought Clemson, it was a pretty solid team. And Kentucky in the Clemson Regional as a 3 seed, that there was a lot of us in the media that were sort of gaggled around the field, before one of the games this weekend, and somebody tossed the question around to the class about, who would, if you're LSU, who would you not necessarily be afraid to see come here for Super Regionals, but who would you rather not see? And to me, it was, I would rather not have to play Kentucky if I was LSU, not just because they're an SEC team, but just because, like, Kentucky just has this weird ability to win close games. Mm-hmm. And I know they only lost by 1 run to West Virginia. That, then West Virginia clinched a spot to come here. But I mean, Kentucky before that, though, they had won so many, 1 and 2 run ball games. It's like, there's something in a team's DNA, if they can do that. And West Virginia also kind of has that, and I'm not sure if those are like, I don't know how well you can coach a team to win like 1 and 2 run ball games. I think there's just something innate, within a team's DNA that allows them to do that. I think a key for LSU this weekend, obviously outside of, Ianson and Anderson, really sort of taking commands, when they're on the mound in those games that they pitch. But like LSU's going to have to score runs, I think, early in these games, because West Virginia, at least from what I've been able to surmise in my, just few hours of research so far about them, they are very aggressive on the base pass. They want to apply pressure on the defense. And I know that LSU's defense has been great all year long. Very few errors, only one during the 4 games in the regionals this past weekend. And that was the first time. It's like Jay said last night. I can't remember the last time I saw an error from Daniel Dickinson. I have no idea, So you guys score. I think you have to score early in these games. And that's something that LSU did do this weekend. I think in the 3 of the 4 games, I think they scored in the first or second inning. And so, that's something that I think Jay, and his staff and the players, they want to carry over to this weekend, because, I don't think West Virginia, they didn't play a very strong schedule. I think their non-conference schedule was kind of weak. And you play in the Big 12, and that's not super impressive. But, if you put the pressure on them, it kind of gets them out of their plan a little bit.
Corey, get some rest tonight. Don't plan on Saturday's game starting at 1 o'clock, and we'll see what happens after that.
You see
games isn't on team anymore.
You see rain coming?
35% chance is all they need.
That's low for here.
It's that cell on the radar in Port
Oh,
Allen.
yeah. They need to break their Doppler radar and just look at the freaking sky.
We'll be back after the Corey, thanks for your time, man. We appreciate it. All right,
Appreciate you guys.
Corey Diaz from the USA Today Network. We've had to make a change in our lineup, just like Jay Johnson did last night. So speaking of Jay Johnson, he's going to join us next here on Tiger Rag Radio.
How you doing? This is Snoop Dogg.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are tuned in.
Talk LSU sports, interviews, opinions, and your calls around the Tiger Nation.
Baton Rouge was a life for me. Home with LSU Tigers.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio.
We love to score and get highlights and championships and play to win.
Tiger Rag Radio.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Jeff Palermo here along with Todd Horn and Glenn Gilbo as we continue on, trying to get Coach Jay Johnson on here. And, okay, yeah, that seems like the right number to have. But
Well, the what we were talking about with the pitching and Kaysen, Jay said after the game last night that one of the reasons he pitched Ianson on Friday was so he could bring him back on Monday. Mm-hmm. And he did that at the SEC tournament so he would be ready for that role. So I bet you any money, Ianson's going to start Saturday against West Virginia, and they might bring him in relief on Monday against West Virginia if they have to play that game. And what could be cool is if he relieves Ianson with Kaysen in the 9th inning and then starts Kaysen in the 3rd game. I don't know. That would be cool, though.
There's probably not going to be a 3rd game, because I was watching the press conference of Steve Sabins, or whatever his name is, the West Virginia coach, and he made the comment that he's heard that LSU has a couple of good pitchers, and he was being serious. He wasn't being facetious at all. And they haven't had a chance yet to scout those pitchers, but they may get around to it. They're not really worried about the other team. So if he comes in and they have a real understanding of who they're facing in those, in Anthony Ianson and Cade Anderson, they're in trouble.
Yeah, they certainly are. I think they understand what LSU has.
Well, that's not what he conveyed.
I would think they would understand exactly what they are getting into.
I swear to you, this guy was being serious. He was not.
I think anybody could have looked to say that LSU's got the 2 best starting pitchers in the country, 2 of the best starting pitchers in the country. 2 guys are going to be drafted in the first couple of rounds. One guy's going to be a top 10 pick. The other guy's probably going to go in the 2nd round. All right. Let's see. I don't know. Hey, Jack. Let's see. I don't know if Jackson's here. I think we might have to push Coach Johnson to the next hour, because we got to hit a break here. And,
I think we got him.
Well, we got him. Let's hold on. Let's reorganize here. Let's take a quick break. Come back, and we'll have more here of Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio. All right, so due to the fact that we didn't get Jay on when we wanted to and the break schedule here, we originally wanted to get him on at 7 o'clock. Then he had a meeting that he had to get to, a last-minute meeting.
A super regional meeting.
Yes.
So that is pretty important.
That is important, so I can understand that. And we shifted him to 6:45, and then we didn't get a hold of him right away. Our fault. And then so he's cool with joining us at 7:40. I wanted to make sure I didn't want to have him on for 5 minutes. And
7:45.
7:45.
And it's a super regional teleconference with the NCAA.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not the same NCAA guy that Kevin O'Sullivan just dressed down. But no, Jay was cool enough to let me know early on that he couldn't make it because that just came up. So, but Jay was great last night at the press conference.
He was fired up, man. Win number 500. He talked about how it was one of the best wins of his coaching career. There were a lot of fascinating things from that Q&A portion of the press conference. The fact that, and he's a talker, right? He's a guy that he's got this football coach mentality to him, and this West Coast baseball style to him, where he likes to have meetings. He loves calling the offensive timeouts and talking with the hitter, talking with the base runners. But during that time when they were down by 4 runs, he never had that team meeting.
That's right.
Because everything was addressed beforehand, and he just had belief in his team that they would get it done.
Yeah. He was getting a little antsy though. I was watching on the film, and there was one point where he kind of just had his head down. This was before they scored, like in the third when they left the bases loaded. He kind of had his head down, and he was just doing his fingers on the top of his head, And you could tell they were just kind of waiting, but there was a lot of angst in that ballpark, man. It was wild, and it reminded. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say it reminded me of Skip Bertman's last game, the NCAA Regional at Zephyr Field.
Mm-hmm.
LSU,
Against
Tulane. LSU won the opener on a walk-off home run by Mike Fontenot in extra innings. A classic game.
13 innings, right? Something like that?
Yeah. And Lane Mestape pitched about 11 of them.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they lost on Saturday. Weren't really in the game. And then Sunday they're down 7-0 in the 4th inning. And they just looked dead.
Yeah.
And Peter Finney's granddaughter was a bat girl on that team, and she told me later that Skip was going up and down the dugout. Come on, guys, come on! And they just
never
had
reacted.
nothing. Yeah. And Wally Pontiff was trying to do that too, because Barbier had done that the year before, and they just never came around.
Yeah.
And I was fearing that was going to happen to them last night if they didn't score early, like in the third. When Jake Brown flew out, and then in the 4th, I'm saying, man, they got to score here,
No, if they don't score in that inning, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't happen.
But see, I'm sorry, but I think that's why Kason Evans' performance was so amazing, because not only did he strike out 9 in a row, strike out the order, but it was just a demonstrative way that his attitude was just leading that
team. And he didn't
team.
walk that many people.
It wasn't until the 7th inning that he started. He walked the bases loaded in the 7th.
And he pitches fast, man. He's the opposite of just about every other reliever on the team.
Well, he's been a great. I think you're right what you say, Glenn. That he is. Obviously, Kate Anderson and Anthony Ianson have been the 2 main guys here, but he's the 3rd best pitcher on this team.
Right, regardless of whether he's relieving or starting. And really, last night was like a start.
And even in his 2 starts that he didn't have, he had a good start his first game against Tennessee, and then the next 2 were kind of, but they weren't, he didn't blow up in those games.
No.
The Zach Cowan situation, I've been kind of waiting on it. I thought there would be a bit of a regression to the mean here a little bit from him. there's no doubt that him coming to LSU has helped his growth as a pitcher, but I don't think he was as he's not he's not a pitcher. Well, not only that, but he's not that good where his ERA should be below 2, right? He's there. Eventually, he was going to come down to earth a little bit, and I think as the season went on, it's kind of worn on him a little bit, and so his stuff isn't as sharp. So eventually, he was going to come back to earth a little bit, but Evans, man, he just looked phenomenal.
But I don't think that you should count Cowan out.
No, I'm
because,
not.
Because he is struggling with his command on those pitches, and he's throwing the ball higher than he was throwing.
Chris Curry, he's probably one of the best opposing team coaches as far as post-game press conferences, how he's handled
he
them
was
all.
awesome, man.
I mean, he was giving scouting reports last night. He was explaining what they were seeing from Zach Cowan. He said his slider was hanging up in the zone and they were hitting it. And the difference with Kaysen Evans was with that, he called it a split finger that Kaysen was pitching. It was diving out of the strike zone. And then, of course, the spin rate that he's got on his fastball and all that. And he talked about the plane it was – if you want to nerd out on pitching, Chris Curry, the head coach for Little Rock, broke down both of those pitchers' performances and what was happening and what they were seeing out of them and what they were expecting. And so Kaysen Evans' stuff was sharper, but that Kaysen Evans is a guy that's going to pitch in the major leagues most likely. I don't think Zach Cowan is a guy that's going to pitch in the majors.
But Zach Cowan has still been a good pitcher.
He's been a very good pitcher.
And I don't like your ERA explanation. You can have phantom passing statistics in football.
But eventually,
ERA is ERA.
But I understand.
He's still got a good ERA.
He does. But
he had a good ERA in the SEC too.
His talent is not. He is not a pitcher. The talent that he has, it shouldn't be an ERA below 2. Eventually, it was going to rise a little bit. He's not. His stuff isn't that good.
Right.
Well,
okay.
Risen.
Okay. I understand. But
you've watched the Cubs too much.
Last night, Jeff. If his pitch command was on, he would have still been sticking to that same level of ERA. I mean, he would have been getting those batters out.
But that's the thing. He is not talented enough to, and that's not the right word I'm trying to find. But his stuff isn't that good where he can pitch that great for that long consistently.
Well, he did it for
most
of the season.
Here's the other. No, he's talking about like in a game.
No, I'm just saying just look at the last 4 or 5 games for Cowan.
I'm wrong. Well, he hasn't pitched since May 15th. That's something that we forget, too.
But neither is Evans, and he looks sharp.
Well, Evans is better than him, but Cowan is still...
Exactly, that's what I'm just trying to say.
But Cowan is better than everybody else they got.
He's very good.
From the pen.
He is very good, but I'm just saying he's not at the level of a Kaysen Evans, and eventually his ERA would show that. We'll take a break. More of Tiger Rag Radio when we come back.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. You get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Gilbo.
They're players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Coming up later on, the Max Home Hotline, we'll have Andrew Caridi, who is the play-by-play voice for the West Virginia baseball team, and Jay Johnson will join us later on in the show. We've been moving him around a lot in Jay Johnson-like fashion, right? He likes to move guys around.
Yeah, we're going to close with Jay Johnson. He was our starter, but we're going to close with him.
Yeah, and we're not afraid to make changes to our batting lineup.
We're not.
At the last possible moment.
This is when you take a risk, he said.
Okay. We haven't said this. I mean, maybe we're just taking it for granted, but we haven't said that Case and Evans and Ethan Fry had historic performances.
I said Case and Evans' performance was legendary. I mean, if he doesn't, I think you alluded to it earlier in the show. If he doesn't do what he does, we're talking about LSU season ending way too early last. In this show, we're talking about because if he goes out there and he gives up, let's say in the 4th inning, he gives up 3 more runs or something like that. If he gives up a 3-run homer, whatever it might be, and they're down by 6, 7, or even 4. I don't think they come back.
See, that's the thing. It wasn't just the performance that he was doing and executing on the mound. It was his attitude and how that was contagious. And even when everybody in the box was trepidatious and there was angst out there,
he was mowing people down.
And expectations, he was doing it by, doing that walk after the 3rd strike off the mound.
Yeah.
He was pumping them up. And Ethan Fry even said that he encouraged him internally and led him to go out and he was 6 or what was he?
4 for 4.
4 for 4 with 2 walks. So he was on base all 6 times that he went to the plate last night.
Had a solo home run and
2 doubles,
3-run double. It's the best performance by a freshman pitcher in a huge game since Brett Laxton struck out 16 to win the national championship in 1993, and he pitched a complete game, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So Kaysen, if he'd have pitched a complete game, he might have had as many strikeouts.
And what about Luis Hernandez? Luis Hernandez caught every pitch this weekend except for, I think,
the ceremonial first pitch.
No, I think maybe I'm wrong. But
I didn't know he was out there all the time, right? Or did
Kate Aaron Beatty did pinch hit for him?
Did Aaron Beatty come in at the end of the game
against Dallas?
He pinch hit Friday night.
But he caught the overwhelming bulk of every game.
And 2 home runs last night, 2 critical home runs for insurance.
And that single. That crushed single leg.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I don't know, you guys have the stats, I think, in front of you. I don't know how many home runs Hernandez has hit this year, but all of them
9.
seem like they've been big.
9.
Right? The home run against Oklahoma, they just all have seemed come into a clutch situation. But what if I told you guys in February that Ethan Fry would be LSU's best hitter in June? What would you have thought?
I would have said, that's awesome.
I would have been surprised, though, because
right,
thinking,
exactly.
Jared Jones.
I mean, he was
Daniel
fighting
Dickinson.
for at-bats early on in the season.
And, Curiel and Milam got off to great starts. But, Fry has been the man. I mean, it's amazing.
Almost it's just amazing how, these things work out, because if I remember last year, like Stephen Milam, he wasn't even in the starting lineup on opening day last year. And he was arguably LSU's best player throughout the entire season, most consistent player position-wise throughout the whole season. Gavin Dugas in the 2023 team, he didn't start on opening day, and he was one. Of course, by the end of the year, he's one of the main guys. It's just amazing how that works in baseball.
Well, and even though Milam was 0 for 5 last night,
he struck the ball well.
He did, and he was at one point 9 for 9.
Yeah,
during this regional. Or 7 for 7 with 9 for 9 on base.
So there'll probably be another time where this team has a drought, if you would, kind of like what you saw on Sunday night, where they, for 7 or 8 innings, 9 or 10 innings, they just don't do much. But once they get it rolling, they're tough to stop. And it's good to see Curiel swinging the bat as well as he is in the regional, because he kind of faded towards the end of the season. He looks recharged. And offensively, they look good. They look good, other than that stretch there on Sunday where they were handcuffed by Malcolm Brown, a guy who nearly quit the team earlier this season.
And almost didn't show up for the game because of his stomach issue.
Yeah, that's the worst hole on the team I see as far as winning a national championship.
Yeah.
Is that, they're one 20 home run hitter away from really having a great lineup. Because, look, they just lost 2-0 to Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, and that wasn't one of Ole Miss's best pitchers. And then they get stymied by a backup Little Rock pitcher, So there's a tendency for them. They're going to have a game here and there where they just don't do anything, But their pitching can carry them. And I think you asked the question to Diaz earlier, what did LSU get from the Little Rock win? I think they got a lot from that because it goes into their bank account of games that they pulled out, like Tennessee, when they were down 6-0 in
Actually,
the ninth.
that was me.
That was it was a very good question.
And that good question, Todd. And I think they just have kind of a swashbuckling attitude. They feel like they can do it in any situation.
Well,
and they have won a lot of different type games.
Well, but we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and the key to them hitting the ball efficiently in every game and not going into those slumps, especially here late in the postseason, is going to be balanced throughout the lineup. And when you switch the lineup the way you did, and you have Ethan at 2 hitting powerfully and effectively the way he's hitting, and then you have Milam beginning to stroke the ball. You have Hernandez contributing at 8. And you have balance now. It's just a matter of whether you're going to continue to execute that at the plate at those different levels.
You expect that to be the batting order in game 1?
I wouldn't change it now. Right. Would you?
No. I like Ethan Fry at number 2. And as we just mentioned it a few minutes ago, he's the best hitter on the team. Right. And you got to get him more at bats.
And I also think it's important to realize how different the nature of this weekend series is in the Super Regionals than the regionals. It's a regular series, and LSU is set up.
Yeah.
To just win the first 2 games.
And the Super Regional, you don't have to play a third game, whereas in the regional you had to play a third game. Now, I think Jones got 2 hits yesterday, and Milam went over for 5. I think you might see Jones go back to maybe third, or who knows?
Yeah.
But and Jay made a great point. He said when you put a guy down to what was he 6?
6.
Yeah, he was 6. He said that pitchers sometimes after they get through that 5th batter, they kind of take a little break, and he just wanted to give Jared, an extra chance, But some of this we're talking about a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I really like Curiel and Fry back to back to start the game, and that's what Jay said. He said I want them to have to face those 2 guys right off.
What did you guys think about them walking Curiel twice to get to Jones?
Yeah, that was tough, man, and I'm sure Jones, because that happened, I think it was a good move for Jay to just kind of give Jones a little break and put him back down in the order a little bit.
It's watching Jared Jones. It's been a struggle. He was 2 for 25 going into last night's game, and this was a guy.
That was dating back to the South Carolina series?
Yes. And really, you go into I would say the first weekend that he started to struggle. I mean, really struggle was the Auburn series, it feels like. And since then, I know he had the big home run against Tennessee, and it's amazing how that home run, or the pitch location of that home run against Tennessee and the pitch location on Monday night were about the same. I mean, right down the freaking middle, and we've seen it now for 3 years. If you put a ball thigh high to him on the inner half of the plate, he's going to hit it a long way. And so I'm not going to sit here and say he's totally out of his slump, but that had to feel really, really good for him to hit his home run. We'll see what happens. Maybe he comes out and he goes 3 for 4 on Saturday. But it's amazing how he was really having a great season. First half of this year, and then it's just too much chase, and then too much swing and miss on the breaking balls, and there were 2 pitches that Malcolm Brown threw to him on Sunday when he struck out. I think that was when there was the bases loaded. 2 breaking balls up in the zone, and he just completely fanned on him. And it's just like, man, this is tough to watch, to see this guy struggle as much as he's struggling.
Well, on the broadcast, they had a graphic that they put up, and they broke down the season into 2 equal halves, and he's batting in the second half of the year. He's only has like 2 extra base hits in the second half of the year.
I missed that stat.
And like a 170 batting average or something like that, compared to over 330 in the first part of the year.
Yeah, no, it's but we'll see if they can get him going. He hit 28 home runs last year, and that was his 20th last night. So it's been it's been a little bit more of a struggle for him. But Ethan Fry, that guy has made himself some money, and I would think there's going to be teams that are certainly going to look at him in the Major League Baseball draft.
Yeah, he's not just hitting the ball well.
He's hitting it hard.
He's hitting it hard.
Yeah, he's hitting it really, really hard. So very impressive stuff from Ethan Fry. Really very impressive stuff from a lot of these guys. And it should be a fun weekend. Super Regional Series, in case you have not heard the start times, 1 o'clock on Saturday, 5 o'clock on Sunday, and then to be determined on Monday. But it is a bit of a relief, I think, for LSU fans. Now, again, I don't know. We'll see what time that game starts on Saturday. Rain chances, I'm not saying they're high for the weekend, but it might be just enough.
I think it's like 25% on Saturday.
Yeah, well,
you know, I wrote about this a little bit last week. It's always amazed me. Everyone who's grown up or lived in South Louisiana for a long time, once you get to April and May through August, there's something called afternoon thunder showers. I mean, I remember when I was playing baseball as a kid, it always rained at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And every time they schedule these regional games at 1 o'clock, play the freaking game at 11 o'clock. You got a better chance to get it in, you know, and because they had games starting at 11 last week.
Well, as you know, TV's got control over this at this point, and they're not looking at the weather like Jay Johnson looks at the weather.
Well, does TV like rain delays? I mean, it would make a lot more sense to start at Alex Box at 11.
Well, the 5 o'clock Sunday should be good, hopefully, but it should be a fun weekend. We'll take another break when we come back. Well, let's dive into just the regionals overall, and Vanderbilt losing, Texas losing, Georgia losing. Let's kind of dive into that. We talked a little bit with Jacob Rudner about that, but let's kind of get into it a little bit more. So stay tuned for that. This is Tiger Rag Radio. We are going to have a scouting report on West Virginia. The voice of the Mountaineers baseball team, Andrew Caridi, will join us coming up after the 7:30 break. And then we will have Jay Johnson on later on in the show. We'll talk with him, get his thoughts on this Super Regional Series, and a quick look back at what he thought happened here in the Baton Rouge Regional. So we'll stay tuned for all that. We'll get to it when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Tracks.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
And we're back with Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horn and Glenn Gilbo. What a fun, one of my favorite weekends of the sports calendar was last weekend, the regional play. Always high drama, all kinds of games. Your head is on a swivel trying to keep track of everything that's going on.
5-hour rain delay.
Yes, yeah, it gives you more time to watch the other games, to be honest with you, when that happens. But Texas and Vanderbilt both getting eliminated. We mentioned it to Jacob Rudner of Baseball America. 16 regional hosts, 8 of them did not advance to the Super Regionals. What do you make out of the SEC's performance? You do have Auburn.
9, right?
Nine got eliminated, right?
Right,
You have Auburn, LSU, Tennessee, and Arkansas advancing.
So it's 4, and then 9 go, so that's 13 got in.
And only 3 SEC teams can possibly make the World Series because of Arkansas and Tennessee facing.
But what did you make out of the especially Texas and Vanderbilt?
Well, which one was worse? Vanderbilt?
I think Vanderbilt was worse. They were the number 1 seed.
That's the first time a number 1 seed has failed to make the regional final since 1999.
That's pretty bad. And they barely beat Wright State in the first game. They had to have a home run that somehow was fair that you couldn't tell down the right field line that ended up being a home run.
And Texas lost one of their best pitcher mid-season SEC.
And when I saw UTSA pop up in the and it's not like I've been watching a lot of Roadrunners baseball. I haven't. But I've just been hearing a lot of stuff about that team. I said, that's tough.
Well, they swept Texas at Texas this year.
Yeah.
They beat them in the regular season, and they beat them twice in the region.
When I saw that and you compare it to what LSU was getting, it didn't seem fair because they're the higher seed too, and you would think they would have an easier path. And I understand geography plays a big role in all of this, but you would think Texas would have an easier path than LSU to the Super Regional, and that's not how it ended up happening.
LSU,
you have Schlossnagel from Texas, Jim Schlossnagel, who's your favorite person in the whole world.
He's a great coach, best coach in the league.
Yeah, that's what you two guys.
But not as good as that West Virginia coach. That guy is going to be the best coach when he gets the Mississippi State job.
But Schlossnagel said all regional long, this UTSA team. He was basically saying they were better than Texas from the whole time.
Yeah.
He was saying it the whole time.
Well, I talked to Kirk Bowles, who covers the Longhorns in Destin. Now, we were on the beach and we were having drinks and everything, but he said that he didn't think they were going to get out of the regional because of the pitcher injuries.
Wow. Well, I'm going to
he also likes the West Virginia coach.
You guys always kind of scoff at my theories, but can I give you a theory?
Not on ERA. Go ahead.
Well, can you answer a question first?
Yeah.
Was Schlossnagel right about UTSA being as good as they were, or was Jay more right about Little Rock's coach Curry being the best prepared team he's ever faced before?
I would say Schlossnagel.
Yeah, I think Schloss. There's been a lot of prepared teams that have fit. I mean, Arkansas is very prepared whenever they play LSU.
So we're going to talk to Jay about that. We're going to ask him.
But okay, here's my crazy theory.
We're going to ask Jay who's his starting pitchers are. Go ahead.
We only got a few minutes with them.
Let's
not waste our. We know where we're getting with those.
We're talking about next year, not.
But this, to me, watching this, and I've been watching not SEC baseball not as long as you guys, but 25 years. So I think this was the most grueling 30 game that I can remember. Just even when obviously Missouri was bad, South Carolina was bad, but it just seemed like it was with so many teams. This SEC schedule was just. Or season was so much more grueling than we've seen in the past. And I kind of want, and we saw it in the SEC tournament. I mean, a lot of those games in the SEC tournament were just kind of blah. They're just, not much to them. Only a couple of them were really good. And I don't want to sit there, and I understand baseball is not a physical sport, but I wonder if these guys, some of these teams were just, after going through that 30-game grind and in the SEC tournament, just kind of mentally spent.
Yeah, that's possible. I do think the every SEC season I remember, almost every one is a grind. I mean, I don't know if this one was more of a grind. They're all like that, but I do think that there's more teams that are good because of the portal. They're kind of evening out. But I do think that's a good point. That because you play 30 games, it's mentally and physically taxing. Then you got this SEC tournament. Then you go to the NCAA tournament. And Skip used to always say some teams already are done by this time because the kids just want to go to the beach.
Yeah,
that's a factor. But I think that's a good point.
And then you have teams like Little Rock and Murray State that literally have nothing to lose, and they're having the time of their lives playing in front of these big crowds because they haven't been able to do it all year. It's such a reward for them to play in these settings, and they just go out and play loose and let it go.
So you're saying that the Murray States and the Little Rocks and the UTSAs of the world don't have to go through the physical and mental grind of the SEC season.
They're not facing 96, 95 mile an hour pitching for 30 straight games.
Right. So they just get in. So they're not as worn out. So they get there.
Helps the ACC too.
They're more refreshed. Well, I was going to. You read my mind. ACC has 5 teams in the Super region.
And not as grueling a schedule. They've won national championships.
But it just seemed that way even watching in the SEC tournament. It just seemed like these teams kind of, we got through that 30-game stretch, and they kind of took a breather in the SEC tournament, and there wasn't much
Get rid of the SEC tournament. Get rid of the SEC championship game for the same reasons.
I was thinking that too, Glenn. I think these teams would be better off if you just you played another regular weekend leading into the NCAA tournament.
How much money does the SEC tournament, baseball tournament?
It makes a lot of money, but
and I don't know. Maybe people love the single elimination. I hated it, and I think the play reflected it. These teams showed up there knowing, well, we might go home after today. I mean, your mindset changes. I don't know. Maybe it had an impact on the regionals. We'll be back after this.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row. And honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio, Todd Horn, Glenn Gilbo, Jackson Blackman, our producer. Let's go back out to the Max Home Hotline. Let's get a scouting report on the West Virginia Mountaineers. The voice of Mountaineers baseball, Andrew Caridi, joins us here on Tiger Rag Radio. Andrew, thanks a lot for spending some time with us tonight. I would imagine you're pretty pumped about your trip to Baton Rouge. You probably thought you were going to make this trip last year at one point.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching that game towards the end of the season, right? But no, thanks for having me, guys. I think everybody's excited. Myself, my partner who pitched at Baylor and coached at West Virginia before. They have a new stadium and everything, and obviously Randy Mazey coming along. I know the players are definitely excited about it because the atmosphere was something they talked about the most at Kingsmore Stadium in Clemson, and now they got the opportunity to go to the box, which is like double, triple that. So yeah, no, just a bunch of excitement for sure.
What's the strength of this West Virginia team?
Yeah, I think just consistency across the board. You win a lot of games by just doing a lot of things well. So I'm looking at some numbers right now for West Virginia. And when it comes to relative like Big 12 standings, where West Virginia is at in a lot of these categories, like batting average, doubles, RBI, on base percentage is like all fourth or higher, right? So it's just a really well-rounded team. When you look at things statistically, and same goes for like pitching, it's just consistent across the board, but also senior leadership for these guys. This 3-year run for West Virginia, where you make 2 super regionals, get 2 conference championships, in that span, you've got seniors on the team now who've been a part of all 3 of those years. So just a veteran team for the most part. Enjoy being around each other. They execute, and you put that all together, and you get a pretty good season.
Andrew, this is Todd. Is there any lack of confidence coming into Baton Rouge and having to play LSU in Alex Box Stadium and all of that? I know they just played in Clemson, but what's their attitude towards it?
Yeah, no, I think they're ready to compete. I think this is a really competitive bunch, right? I think it'll be different for a lot of the guys when they get down there because they probably haven't experienced anything like it. But I would imagine that wears off pretty quickly, and they just get to competing, right? Bunch of feisty dudes on this team, and I'm sure the message from the top down coming from Coach Saban is like, embrace the opportunity and let's get after it.
Is there any? Have you talked to Coach or heard any Coach comments on the matchup against LSU or what he thinks about that?
Yeah, I mean, I watched a slight thing, and he basically said the same thing. He did a quick little media hit, but he's looking forward to it, and basically said, it's the guys that I got to come to West Virginia versus the guys that they got to go to LSU. Let's put them on the field and play the game, and he's excited for it for sure.
Was there anything that stood out to you about the play of West Virginia in the Clemson Regional that, other than just the ability to win? Was it the way they won, coming back against Kentucky twice, overcoming Clemson the way they did? Or just, not to put words in your mouth, but what was most characteristic of West Virginia in the regional?
Yeah, I think resiliency was probably the number one thing that stood out to me, because you were losing in every game in that regional, but you swept the thing, right? So you were down 3-0 into Kentucky. You were down to Clemson. in the 7th. In that game, you found a way to win, and then you did the same thing, obviously coming back from 5 twice in the regional final against Kentucky to win it in the bottom of the 8th. So that was clutch, and this team finds a way to win games. As a matter of fact, it took a 7-0 lead on the road at BYU earlier this year, and then trailed 15-7, and then ended up winning the game 19-16. So the team's never out of it. Should mention, too, that in the bottom of the 8th in West Virginia was down 5. All of their runs came with 2 outs. So it was clutch stuff. And honestly, one of those moments where you look back, if you had a win probability chart, you check it out and say, I have no idea how that happened, because it was probably swinging 99% for, the other team at one point in time. But I would say that, and then I would say getting off the schneid. This is not a team that has won a lot of games coming into the NCAA tournament, 7 of their last 9. But that championship caliber team is in there. So
how well does West Virginia baseball fans travel? Do you think there's going to be some coming down here to Baton Rouge, a few hundred or 1,000?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know if they travel as well as you guys to Omaha, right? But I think we should get a solid bunch. The Carolinas are kind of, well-liked by Mountaineer graduates. We've got a good representation, I think, of alum across the country, and then obviously LSU being like a destination for hardcore baseball fans and, know what it's about. So it's kind of interesting. You do really well on the East Coast. The road games maybe, like in Texas that we do in the Big 12, maybe don't do as well. And LSU is a shot away. So I will definitely get a nice contingent. How much? Not sure.
Tell us about the ace of this team, Griffin Kern, and then who could LSU potentially face in the second game of the Super Regional Series?
Yeah, I would guess West Virginia's been rolling, obviously, with Griffin Kern on Friday, who's a D2 transfer for the Mountaineers. We had to work to get to this point. Just a competitor. Throws good pitches. Executes a lot of the time. Trusts his defense. He's got over 300 innings in his career. So he came from D2 Quincy, and it's the second year West Virginia's actually developed a guy, below the D1 level with Derek Clark last year. Winning the Tucson Regional, as well being the Mountaineers Friday starter. So he goes Friday, and then West Virginia has been rolling since the Big 12 tournament with Jack Carsonis, who is a 6th-year guy, transfer from Kent State from Pittsburgh, so about an hour up the road. Had surgery and didn't even pitch, I think, until January of this year. So he's worked from a reliever role into a starter role. Really good fastball, has some cut on his pitches, pounds the zone. So those are your 2 solid guys, and much like, most other teams at this point in the season, or at least one point in the season, that third spot is kind of up in the air.
Offensively, I'm looking at the statistics for West Virginia. It doesn't look like they're, a lot of teams you can look at the offensive statistics and point out and say, hey, that's their guy, or hey, these 2 guys are really dangerous. But it seems, I know Kyle West has got 10 home runs, but Sam White has hit over 350 on the season. Jace Reinhardt has driven in a bunch of runs. So it seems like it's a combination of guys. And then you have the 108 stolen bases that stick out to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you combine a solid lineup that can, that are capable hitters, from top to bottom, and then you're just kind of trading, games where one guy steps up and does this and kind of goes like the above average or, plus for that game specifically. And then if you can get 2 or 3 guys in a lineup that, again, is very just, very consistent and very solid, I think is the right word. You can find a way to win games if you have a couple guys step up in moments, and that's kind of what West Virginia's done.
All right, Andrew, thanks a lot, man. We appreciate it, and enjoy your trip to Baton Rouge. And my advice for you is don't expect that game at 1 o'clock on Saturday to start at 1 o'clock. You'll find out once you get here.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
Bring an umbrella.
Or your sunglasses for the weather delay. One of the 2. You'll need one.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, Desert last year and then Baton Rouge this year. I appreciate the heads up.
All right, man. Talk to you later. We'll be enjoy your trip to Baton Rouge. It's an experience watching a game at the box. You'll never forget it. Thanks a lot for your time tonight, man.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Andrew Caridi. When we come back, he's the voice of the Mountaineers, by the way. When we come back, it'll be Jay Johnson joining us on the Max Home Hotline. This is Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Now more. Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, and after a bit of a delay here, we finally got the man here joining us on the Max Home Hotline. That is LSU Baseball Coach Jay Johnson. He joins us on Tiger Rag Radio. Let's get right into the interview. Coach Johnson, thanks a lot for your time tonight. How much sleep did you get? When did your head finally hit the pillow last night or this morning?
3:15.
Yeah, there you go.
3:15.
And you were probably up at 7 breaking down tape of West Virginia.
6:45. Had a few other things to do today with getting the team ready for the week and lining it up. But yeah, I'm gonna dive into the Mountaineers for the first time here in a little bit.
Let's just reflect quickly on what happened in the Baton Rouge Regional. The decision to change up the lineup going into the game on Sunday or into Monday, I should say. Love your comments in the post game about it was a risk worth taking. And you had full confidence in it. How much of the lineup change, though, was getting Ethan Fry into the number 2 spot as opposed to dropping Jared Jones down in the order?
Well, I think it was the totality of the order functioning as one unit a little bit better. And, keep in mind, we scored 12 runs on Saturday night. I just felt like with kind of the way everybody had been going, the way that Little Rock had kind of pitched us, I thought it was a better solution to give us a chance to score 2 in every inning, if that makes sense. Combinations of speed, power, a little bit of left-right mixture at the top. Obviously Ethan has swung the bat well, as good as anybody, and he certainly did last night. Really like Stephen Milam's at bats. I thought Danny posed a real threat to them, hitting a couple homers in the game on Friday. And then you kind of got into that Jake Brown and Jared, who are 2 of our most dangerous players. If the previous 3 guys had did their job, that would put a lot of pressure on Little Rock when those guys came to the plate. And worked out well, and proud of the guys for executing.
Jay, last night's game obviously was very tense for a while, and it seemed to me like, and I just want to get your opinion on this. It seemed to me like Kason Evans, not just his effort on the mound and his great performance pitching, but his attitude and his leadership with that attitude, and that just you're not going to take it from me and we're going to take it and I'm coming at you, inspired the rest of the team, Ethan Fry, but it also inspired the crowd, and then the crowd in turn inspired. I've never seen Alex Box Stadium like that before, and I just wanted you to comment on that.
Yeah, that's a great observation, and I've seen it before where a pitcher comes in and changes the tempo of the game. I don't know that I've seen it in a game of that magnitude like that, and you're right. I mean, he struck out 9 hitters in a row. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before, and the intensity, the aggressiveness, the confidence, really the enthusiasm that he was pitching with, it lifted everybody. It lifted the fans. And the fans really lifted the team, when we needed it, and stayed with it after, we'd left some guys on base early in the game, and they made it really hard on the opponent last night, which is what, the box is known for. And, it was probably that way, in the Super Regional in 2023. Last night just seemed at a different level, and it's a game I'll never forget, and the environment was a big reason for that.
Jay, just some great efforts by the Little Rock players last night, and you got Zach Cowan because you discovered him at the regional last year. I'm just wondering, is there a chance that some Little Rock players or player might be on the LSU team in the future?
Well, I don't even know if they're home yet, so none of them are in the portal. So the answer to that is right now no. I will say this, my hats are massively off to Coach Curry, that program, those players, and the effort that they put forth. And, regular season difficulty aside, they were finally healthy, finally at a full complement, and they played great. They played great. And, having been at smaller programs like that, the regionals are kind of the pinnacle. And to put that forth of an effort in that environment, nothing but respect for Little Rock.
Jay, I know you weren't watching TV much this weekend, if at all, but obviously the SEC entered with a record 13 teams and only have yourself and 3 others remaining. Does that just speak to the parity of college baseball with like UTSA beating Texas, Vanderbilt losing, not even making it to the regional final for the first time since 1999? That's happened to a number 1 seed. Just what's going on in the sport right now?
Well, I think the nature of it, the nature of the game makes the results less predictable. I think, football and basketball, the talented team wins. The more talented team wins most often. The nature of baseball is a little different because one player, the pitcher, affects so much of the game. It's not always the team with the best players, but it's the team that plays the best that day. And, I will die on the hill that our league is still the best in the country by a mile. And I think the year itself, like I actually counted it out, like 7 hosts lost or not advancing to the super regionals. And I don't know that I ever remember a year like that. And, when you looked at the brackets, nobody really had somebody that wasn't a threat. For instance, like I think DBU was like the highest rated 2 seed in the tournament. So having them in our regional, obviously Little Rock, played great. But you look at that, you mentioned UTSA. They're just a good baseball team. They're not a good mid-major team. They're a good baseball team, and they played great this weekend. They had beaten Texas in the regular season, so that was kind of one I had my eye on as one that was a potential, and they played well, obviously, and got it done.
Jay, Kason Evans has pitched so well for you in just about every game he's pitched, and he's had a variety of roles: closer, longer relief. He's started. Let's see, 6 innings last night. He went 6 innings when he beat Tennessee. What I would imagine you're still going to keep him in that. Maybe he'll start, maybe he'll relieve, maybe a little both type role the rest of the way.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the nature of the competition right now in playoff baseball is you take it one at a time, kind of all hands on deck. I think I used an analogy with somebody this morning or today. Like I remember like Game 7 of, I think it was like the 2014 World Series. The Giants, started somebody that nobody could believe they were starting, and then they went to Jeremy Affeldt, the lefty, and then just tried to get it to the 5th inning with Madison Bumgarner, a starter.
Wow, that's right.
To close it out. And so it's just playoff baseball, and, just the same as we did with Anthony last night. Like that thought had been put in motion, long ago, and, it came to fruition. And it's, like I said yesterday in the press conference, it's why we did what we did in Hoover, because I didn't want that game to be the first time that he had done that. And, proud of him too. What an unbelievable performance by our pitching staff and certainly Anthony this weekend.
So since you've started diving into West Virginia, what sticks out to you when you watch them?
Well, I'm actually starting tonight for the first time. Obviously familiar with some of the names and some of their players. I think, it's their second consecutive super regional. They went to North Carolina last year. First-year head coach, Steve Saban's really good coach. I actually considered bringing him here as one of my assistants when I came to LSU, wanting somebody with ties on this side of the country. They recruited a high level. Their best player last year, J.J. Weatherholt, was a really high pick in the draft. And they're very talented, and they played a really good brand of baseball, and they beat 2 really good teams in the regional, and Kentucky twice and Clemson. So we're going to have to play our best to win, really no different than any other weekend, since league play started or this last weekend.
Coach, thanks a lot for your time. Hold on, Glenn's got one quick more.
Yeah, Jay, you talk about Skip a lot, and I think it's great. I'm wondering, when you took the job or even before, did you ever look at some of his box scores, study the World Series box scores in particular? Have you done that?
I haven't done that. I have. I did study him a lot. I think I've mentioned this before. I bought his videotape, How to Win the Big One is what it was called. And, very familiar with his motivational stories, and obviously just being a college baseball guy, very familiar with a lot of the conquests in Omaha and the key players and all of those types of things. I've had several conversations with him about strategy and pitching strategy and lining your team up for postseason play and doing things in the regular season with a thought of looking ahead. So, indirectly, yes, but no, I haven't broken out the 1996 box scores recently.
Bill Frank has them if you ever need to look at them.
Thanks, Jay.
Well, thanks
All
again,
right.
Jay. Good luck.
Night.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll wrap up the show when we come back.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
All right, guys, we got about 30 seconds here. Predictions for this weekend.
LSU in 2.
I think LSU in 2 as well.
I'm going to say LSU in 3.
I knew you were going to deviate.
Well, it would be boring if we all said that they're going to sweep.
I know.
But I like LSU in 3.
Casey Evans starts the third game?
Yes. Yeah, there you go, Glenn. I like that.
That would be cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does
cooler if it's in 2.
Want to thank everyone involved: Jacob Rudner, Corey Diaz, Jay Johnson, Andrew Caridi, Jackson Blackman, Glenn Gilbo, Todd Horn. I'm Jeff Palermo. For the latest in LSU sports, check out TigerRag.com.
Tiger Rag is everywhere. Online at TigerRag.com. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Tiger Rag Magazine. Or follow us on Twitter at Tiger_Rag.